How do I export worker payroll records to include in my payroll system? I've signed into Care Portal. I go to Reports. Under Export Grids, Export SJ Transactions. Now the first thing I want to do is to filter by my payroll period. So I'm going to choose a starting date of 2/1/2011, going through 2/15/2011. That happens to be my payroll period. Now there are a number of other options you can use to filter your exports. For example, you can filter by whether the visit is confirmed. I'll choose yes. Whether it's owned by the remote user or point of care. I'm going to say no because I don't want the ones that are still owned by the point of care user. I can choose the ones that are billable. There's various other options you can choose. Payable, yes. Complete, yes. So you can go through the options and determine which items you would like to select for your payroll. Alternatively, a much easier approach, rather than choosing the individual items in addition to the payroll start and end dates, is to just simply choose yes in the payroll ready column. This collects all of the records that are billable, payable, confirmed, owned by the office, and are complete. So I'm going to choose yes for this item, and I'm going to apply filter. And then you see I have a list of all of the records that are ready to be exported for payroll. Now what if I want to see a count of different types of visits by worker? So I'm going to scroll over and notice I have a column here. It's a special column called Payroll Group or Payroll Group 2. Now different agencies have different ways of organizing and collecting their payroll information. I'm going to focus in on this Payroll Group 2, which gives the worker's name and the discipline and what we call the SJ transaction code, which is a type of visit, whether it be a routine visit, an admission visit, there's discharge visits. Each of those has a code associated with them. Typically you'll pay differently depending on whether it's an admission visit or a routine visit or a discharge visit, for example. So I'm going to click on this column here, hold down my mouse key, drag up, and notice on the left hand side there are two red arrows. That indicates that I'm now ready to unclick my mouse. Once I do that, it's going to group by this payroll group. And notice that now I have all of my visits organized by worker, discipline, and visit type. So this particular worker had one admission visit, 3 routine visits in OT, and then this worker, Bennett, has 2 routine visits, and so forth. If you'd like, you can expand the visits to see what's inside of them by clicking the plus sign. You can scroll down and see the patients and the times and so forth. If I click minus, it takes me back. Now at this point, the trick is to export your records to Excel so that you can then import them into your payroll, or you can just key them in manually, whatever process you prefer. But when I click Mark All Records and Export to Excel, that's going to indicate to the system that we're done with those visits and they should not be included in any subsequent payroll exports. Now once I've done that, it says the records have been marked as exported and they're available here. So I click here. It asks me if I want to open or save. I do want to save that Excel spreadsheet, so I click Save. Double click on there to go into my payroll folder. And I can name this whatever I want. I can keep the name that it suggests for me, or what I prefer to do is put a date in. So I put in 2011 0201, that's February 1st, 2011, dash 2011 0215 through February 15th. The reason I like to use the year first and followed by the month and then the days is then it sorts correctly when I look at them in a list later on throughout the year. So I'm going to click Save. Once I've done that, I can click Open to see it within Excel. And now you can see my records as they appear in Excel. I can also expand these to see what's inside of them as well. And I can collapse them back if I don't care about the details. So I'm going to close out of this. Now, later on, let's say I want to do the payroll for February 16th through March 1st. Well, what happens if I have stragglers or visits that come in after I've already done my payroll for February 1st through 15th? And say that we get a visit in for February 13th after I've already done the payroll for February 1st through 15th. The way around that is to come back in later on when you're doing your subsequent payroll run, keep your start date as February 1st, and then change your end date to March 1st. And because the ones from the payroll period of February 1st through 15th had already been marked, they will not be picked up again. But the stragglers that came in later for that same period would be picked up in this payroll period because I've kept my original date and I just keep marching forward with my end date. And that ensures that all the stragglers will get picked up. Now what happens if I do a payroll export and I realize, oh, it's not correct, I want to redo it, and I've already marked them? Well, there is a way that you can unmark them by going to Operational Grids, Service Journal Transactions. This is like a sister grid to the Export Service Journal Transactions. It's basically the same thing, except that it does not have the export option or the mark as exported option. So I'm going to go to 2/1/2011 through 2/15/2011, apply filter, and you'll notice here there's a button that says Unexport Exported Records. Now if you'd like to see which ones have been exported, you can scroll over to the far right and there's a column called Exported Date Time. So this was the date and time on which the records were exported. If they had not been exported, there would be no information in these cells. So we know these have been exported, and if we'd like to export all of the ones that are in this list, we can just click Unexport Exported Records, and that would reset it back to as though those records had never been exported to begin with. And so you can re-export them as you please.